check the weather and I will trust my sources when it says it's the wet season and it gets really, really bad here. This tank entering the presidential palace was a turning point in the world's history. I just crossed the border, country number 45. Now I'm trying to find a SIM card where I don't get scammed, because so far the prices are not good, so let's see here. Hello. We are starting our visit to Ho Chi Minh in Cholon, I think. It's Chinatown, basically. The Chinese have played a very, very important role in the history of Vietnam, especially in the southern part, where the Chinese have contributed throughout the years to make this city a bustling port of trade. Many Europeans came here and they relied on the Chinese to trade with China and with other empires and nations in Southeast Asia. Here we are at a Chinese temple. It is a Taoist pagoda. It's from the 18th century. Now this is a Taoist temple, as I mentioned just now, but throughout this trip we will see also Catholic churches, Buddhist temples. This is just a little, this is just a little hint of how diverse Ho Chi Minh and Vietnam is. By the way, I forgot to say, this temple is called Tien Hao, and the entrance is free, so you'll be able to come here without paying, and trust me, it's beautiful. Check it out. I had to wake up very early this morning and I think I need a cup of coffee or something, so I'm gonna search for a coffee place here in Chinatown. Let's see what I find. Something very interesting about Ho Chi Minh is that there's many coffee shops around, and each of them are very, very unique with their own style, their own coffee, their own things. I just went to one, which is quite famous. I got a tiramisu and a coffee. The coffee was not the best I've ever had, but still, I like the originality they have here. Now I think I'm going to order a bike to the northern part of the city. Price is ridiculously cheap. I think it's like €1 to get to the other side of the city. So yeah, let's see if I find one. Okay. This is just insane. It started to rain like crazy and I didn't have any cover and I'm completely wet. This is just the most extreme rain I've ever seen, I swear. It is just unbelievable. Holy crap. I've made it to the northern part of the city. I am here in an area where there's many Buddhist temples. I'm not sure if this is one, but there's another there, but I think it's gonna be closed now. Buddhism arrived to Vietnam in the century 2 BCE, I think. After independence, both North Vietnam and South Vietnam persecuted the Buddhist monks and Buddhism started to decay. However, we can still see the temples that remained from the area where Vietnam was very, very Buddhist. It is just impossible to get over there. It's just completely flooded. Oh my god. I am trying to order a cab through this app called Grab. This is the app that I used for getting here by bike, which turned out to be a terrible idea. And now the prices are skyrocketing. What would cost me like €2, €3 like a few hours ago, now that it's raining, I have to pay like about €7 to €8. This is just crazy. The rain destroys the city completely. It becomes paralyzed. It's impossible to do anything. And all the streets are flooded. Ho Chi Minh, or as it was known before the Vietnamese War, Saigon, was the home of many empires throughout history. First Funan, then the Khmer, the Cambodians as we know them today. They settled this part of the Indochina peninsula. Especially the Cambodians stayed here for a long time until the Vietnamese came from the north in the 17th century, settling forever here and pushing the Cambodians. I am now heading to my accommodation. It is raining so hard, it hasn't stopped the entire day. It's really hard to move around. Okay guys, check out my room. I have private bathroom. Here you have my clothes. Drying up. I had to change my outfit because everything was just too wet. I got this for €10, $10, private bedroom, private bathroom, and I'm right in the party district, so yeah, quite nice. As I don't want to spend more money on transportation, I think I'm going to try to take the bus to the place I want to go. If I take a bike, I will get wet again, and I really don't want to use more clothes. So yeah, let's see how the bus works here. Bus is just 30 cents. Awesome. I am very surprised by the number of green zones that you can see here in Ho Chi Minh. I think this perhaps due to the communist planning, the way they had to think or to like conceive the cities in a way that cities should be more livable, more practical to a human being. Perhaps it's also the European influence, the French influence. I don't know, but I really like this about Ho Chi Minh. It's quite different from the other big Southeast Asian cities. I have a feeling that I will have pneumonia tomorrow or something like that. I think it's not healthy to be wearing wet clothes at all times, and still it's not that hot, it's not that warm today. So, oh, squirrel! As I was saying, I think next time I will check the weather and I will trust my sources when it says it's the wet season and it gets really, really bad here. Crossing the street here is very hard. The reason why I've moved to this part of the city, it's because there's this temple which is Buddhist. There's nothing really special about it. The only thing is that President Obama came to this exact temple and paid like a visit or something. I am now walking the Backpackers Street. This is the place where many backpackers, of course, come to party and to drink and stuff. There's many locals. Good morning from Ho Chi Minh. Yesterday I was trapped in one of the worst monsoons I've ever experienced, and I didn't realize its effects until today. All my clothes that were inside my bag are completely soaking. They are wet. I cannot use them at all. And what it's worse, my external battery isn't working anymore because it got wet. Today I'll try to be more cautious. Anyway, today we're going to submerge ourselves in the recent history of the city. At first, let's check a market out. Let's go. That was intense. I mean, every time I got out the camera, they would stop offering me things and the hustle would stop. But as soon as I put out the camera, they would start over to, you know, do you want to buy this, do you want to buy that? But it's quite funny, and I think there are many things, many interesting things. I just don't have the money to buy them, but that's it. Look at this street with these high, tall trees. It's beautiful. This is the War Remnants Museum. Here you can find some relics of the war that struck the country for almost 20 years. In that time, the communist North, supported by the communist bloc, China, the USSR, fought a war against the Western-leaning South, supported by the US. They were fighting to decide the ideology of a unified Vietnam. The war became famous because it was the first war in which the United States lost. The US provided soldiers, they got involved in the war, they sent their troops, they were actively fighting the war against the communist North, and they lost. The North Vietnamese conquered the entire country, and Vietnam, after 1975, would become a new communist state. It was the 30th of April of 1975 that this tank you see here, Tank 843, entered the presidential palace of Saigon, ending a war that lasted over 20 years, unifying Vietnam forever. Behind me you can find the presidential palace of Saigon of South Vietnam, that it was later turned into the Reunification Palace or Independence Palace. As I said before, it now commemorates the end of the War of Vietnam, a war that killed thousands of people, that involved a lot of international soldiers, a lot of international movement around this topic, and a war that could have defined the Cold War, but in the end it didn't turn good for the communists. This tank entering the presidential palace was a turning point in the world's history. After the fall of Saigon to the communists, the city would be renamed from Saigon to Ho Chi Minh in honor of the famous general that led the North Vietnamese, the communists, to their victory in the south. He was dead by the time Saigon fell, but he of course was the spiritual leader of the entire revolution and the North Vietnamese. What you see behind me is the Cathedral of Saigon. It was built by the French. In fact, the French, before the independence of Vietnam, used to rule these lands, used to rule Indochina, the territories which now are Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. The capital city of the entire colonial administration was here in the city, and they left a massive legacy of colonial buildings, etc., etc. This building, which is also French, I assume, it is... No. Thank you. It's now the Museum of the Cities. Thanks to the information leaflet I have here, I just learned this was the palace where the governor of Cochinchina used to live during the French colonial times, and it was built during the end of the 19th century. What you saw in the previous clip where I was interrupted by this man is this kind of like shoe sellers that there are all over the city. They come at you, they point at your shoes, and they start trying to sell you some shoes. It is true there's quite a lot of hustlers here in Ho Chi Minh, but it's not as bad as other places. honest, the museum does not have much in special. It was quite fun to see many couples taking their pictures for their weddings. But yeah, apart from that, apart from being a very nice place to take pictures, it doesn't have too many things. Or perhaps it has them, but I think it's quite disordered, the museum. There's not like a coherence or like a story that tells you the museum. It's just pictures, some artifacts, but it really doesn't tell you much about the history of the city. This building again is of French influence, and it is the headquarters of the People's Committee of Vietnam, or of Ho Chi Minh, I think. The person you see behind me is Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh, as I said before, was the leader of the communists, the leader of the North Vietnamese. He died before he could see his life goal accomplished, which was to conquer the south of Vietnam, reunite the country under the communist rule. And this is the opera, which is also French. It is in fact still working. There are still shows. And this is the Nguyen Hue Street. Check it out, it's very wide, and you have supermarkets, you have shops on the sides, also places where you can grab a drink. And down there, it's the riverside. Holy shit! That was it for Ho Chi Minh. I am now at the airport, waiting for going back to Singapore. Overall, I really like the city, although of course I had some trouble with the rain and stuff. It is a very, very interesting place, and I think it is, for now, my favorite city in the region. So yeah, see you soon. Take care.